This is a tutorial for the ART161 patterns assignment, part 1 and part 2. Within the patterns assignment, there are going to be two parts. The first part is going to be creating 3 custom full colored patterns using an 8.5 by 11 document and a 6" by 6" area to showcase the pattern that you have created. You're going to be creating 3 digital patterns that are in full color and then converting those into grayscale. And then for part 2, you're going to be working with border play and starting to use one single icon, element, typography, whatever it may be in the center that will stay the same within the sizing throughout all the different borders. Again, using an 8.5 by 11 document and coming up with 6 unique borders for that composition. So let's take a look at part 1 here a little bit further and look how we can set this up. I'm going to go ahead and go into Adobe Illustrator and click on New File. If your default is set to pixels here within the measurements, go ahead and change that to inches. And we can see that we have an 8.5 by 11 document, an orientation that is portrait, which will be fine. And I'm going to go ahead and change the artboards here to 6, since we will need 3 colored patterns and those same 3 patterns in grayscale as well, which will be a total of 6 pages that will be needed. That way, when you save this out as a PDF, it will save as a multi-page PDF within the document itself. So 8.5 by 11, changing to inches, choosing 6 artboards here. I'll go ahead and hit create. And just to make sure that we are in the correct working space, I'm going to come up to Window and reset my Essentials working space here so that we're all working in the same space. I'm going to go ahead and zoom into my first page. Now, the best way to use Illustrator to create patterns is to actually use the pattern maker that is available. And if you go up to the very top of your document here or within the program and go to Object, you'll notice that there is a pattern tool. And if we go to Pattern and Make, this will open up the different options for your pattern options. So you'll see here that a new pattern is going to be added to the swatches panel. Any changes made while in pattern editing mode will be applied to the swatch upon exit. We'll go ahead and hit OK. And with that, we see that there is this square now, this blue square, which is where I'm going to place my pattern. This is where my pattern is going to begin. You'll also notice that it opened up this pattern options dialog box here. And this is where you can title your pattern. I'm going to go ahead and put in here pattern 1. And we have some other options inside here as well, as far as the tile type, how the pattern is going to be related to one another within these box shapes here, whether it's a grid, brick by row, brick by column, hex by column, or hex by row. You can choose any of those options that you like. And you can also change the size of the box if you would like here as well. If for any reason the move tile with art is toggled on as a default, go ahead and toggle that off. And we'll look at some of these options as we get a little bit further. So to begin this, I'm going to go ahead and create a couple shapes inside here. And first off, I'm going to change the properties of the shapes. So I'm going to click on the stroke and remove the stroke and go ahead and put a color to the shape inside the space here as well. So you can use anything inside the pattern maker as far as the shapes, pen tool, elements, so on and so forth, typography, logos. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to use a single ellipse here. And you'll notice that as soon as I start to create some sort of ellipse within the space, it starts to repeat that within the overall pattern. Now, what you'll notice is that I'm only in control of this single shape here. I actually can't, whoops. Let's go back into that again. Double clicked out of that. Go back into Pattern and Make. And let's bring this back here. Go back into my shape tool, give that a color, and remove that stroke. So again, you'll notice that I cannot click on any of these other shapes outside of here. I can only edit the shape that I have, but it's starting to give me a preview of what this pattern is going to look like. And just with this simple shape, you can start to explore the different options within the tile type. So the default is going to be set to grid. Those would be stacked vertically and horizontally. I typically like to use something like brick by row to give it a little bit of a change up from row to row here. But you can use any option that you would like and play with these settings within the space here. So keeping it very simple, using this single element here, I can see that I have some sort of pattern that has started to be created. And of course I could go in and add more to this if I would like to. But I also have the option to go ahead and save this out into my swatches as the pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to save a copy up here. And you'll notice that I'm actually in my pattern maker. I have three options: save a copy, to be done with this pattern, or to cancel. Now I want to keep this as a full color, but I also want to make this grayscale. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as a copy here and title this pattern 1 color. Now when I hit OK, it's actually going to go ahead and add this to my swatches panel, which it's telling me right here. Any additional changes can be edited within that swatch panel as well. And you'll notice that this new swatch popped up here within my swatch panel, pattern color 1. So I'm going to come back to that and use that. But before I do that, I want to go ahead and convert this to grayscale as well so that I can use this for my secondary pattern that will show this in grayscale. And in order to do that, I need to open up my color window. So I'm going to come up to the top and go to color. And with the fill color selected, or the stroke color, depending on what you have, you'll need to select each element within the pattern and click into the top right-hand corner of your color window. And currently this is set to CMYK. And we want to convert this to grayscale. So if I click on grayscale, it's going to take that color that I have and automatically convert that into grayscale. And I can go ahead and save a copy of this as well. This time I will call this pattern 1 grayscale. Hit OK, and now I have a new pattern in here as well within my swatches. So once you have created your full color and your grayscale pattern, you can then go ahead and hit done or cancel. I'm going to go ahead and just hit cancel since I have both of those swatches already created. And as soon as I hit that, whatever I've created within that pattern actually disappears within the screen. But the pattern is still here within my swatches. So at this point, what I need to do is create a 6" by 6" box and place that pattern inside. So I'm going to come back over to my shape tools and go to rectangle. And to designate the specific size, I'm just going to click one time in the artboard and type in 6" by 6". And that's going to give me the bounding box that I can include my pattern inside. So I'm going to go ahead and center that on my first artboard here. And you'll notice that currently this shape only has a white fill with a black stroke. So to put that pattern inside, all I need to do is simply click on one of the swatches that I have created, and that pattern will show within the space. And if I were to extend this box, it will continue that pattern. And this could be any shape that you would like. In this case, we're simply using a square. Now, I also need my grayscale version. So I'll come back to my rectangle tool here, and I'm going to click into my artboard again and hit OK to create that 6" by 6" square. Go ahead and place this on my second artboard or page here. And this time, I'm going to go ahead and click on my pattern 1 grayscale that I've created so that I have both my full color pattern and my grayscale pattern. Now, essentially, this is a very simplified pattern, but you will continue to build this out in that same way using full color and grayscale and complete the assignment using the patterns that have been created within the swatches. Once you have completed all of your patterns, 3 in full color and those same 3 converted to grayscale, then you will simply save your document as an Illustrator file. So it's going to indicate that there's an Illustrator file so that you can work on it. And then once you have saved that as an Illustrator file, you will save this out as a PDF. and that will include all of the artboards within that single PDF that will be uploaded to Canvas. So please try to explore some options within this. You can add more shapes, of course. You can add things like the pen tool or the brushes, typography, whatever you would like within the patterns themselves. Just make sure to convert all of those single elements to grayscale and create another swatch. And once you have all 6 of those, you can then move on to part 2, which is border play. So let's go ahead and jump back over to part 2 here, which will show the border play, and I'll review this very quickly as well. Again, we're going to use 8.5 by 11. This will just be a single sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and go back into Adobe Illustrator and create a new document here. Still letter size 8.5 by 11, but I only need one artboard for part 2. So I'm going to change my artboards to 1 and hit create. Now for part 2, you need to come up with some sort of consistent element that is going to be used in the center of all of your borders. And that can either be an icon, a glyph, some sort of typography. I'm going to go ahead and just click in here and create some sort of typography and select a typeface that might work for this. And again, this could be anything that you would like as long as it is consistent within all of the borders that you are exploring. Let's see if I can find something here. Let's go with this. And I'm just going to go ahead and increase the size of that by coming over to my Properties tab and using 72 point. Now, once you have this, you could convert this to outlines if you would like to. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to come up to Type and go to Create Outlines. And that makes this a shape versus text, which is sometimes easier to deal with within the space. So this is going to be my element for all 6 of my borders. And you could go ahead and copy this over 6 times if you would like to. We'll go ahead and with that selected with the black arrow tool, I can simply click on Duplicate Object down here. And it will start to duplicate that within the space. And I can simply move that around so that I will have all 6 of these ready to use. So I'm simply just hitting that duplicate object a couple times to duplicate that. It's pasting it right in front of that previous element. And now I can start to use the borders. Now there's a lot of different ways that you can go about this. If you wanted to create a somewhat simplified border, maybe you want to use some sort of shapes. I'm going to go ahead and use the polygon tool here. And I'm going to get rid of my fill and go ahead and use some sort of stroke. Now remember, this is only in grayscale. So I'm going to go ahead and use black here and just maybe, actually we'll just keep it 100% black. And I'm going to draw a polygon here using my shift tool to keep that straight and center that over my first element. Now again, I could duplicate this and potentially come up to the corner with my black arrow tool or use the rotate tool to rotate this within the space and potentially change the value of that to be somewhat lighter. And of course you could keep doing this if you would like to by hitting the duplicate again and kind of spacing this around to achieve the border pattern that you would like. You can see how we're starting to get some kind of interesting range here within the style and the values that are being shown. Maybe I'll make this one a little bit lighter. So this might be one of my options for my borders. Now another way to go about this is to use some of the newer tools that are available on Adobe Illustrator 2024. So again, I'm going to go ahead and come back to my polygon tool here. And I'm going to create a small polygon here within the space above my new letter A. And again, with my black selection tool, I can see that with that selected, it's giving me an option down here to repeat this object. And if I click on that repeat object, I have radial, grid, and mirror. I'm going to go ahead and click on radial. And what that will do is it will start to take that shape and use it along a radius here. Now I can change the size of this radius by coming up to the top of this little node and kind of bringing that outwards, and then simply selecting this and bringing it, centering it over my letter form. Of course, I can make this a little bit wider, just give a little bit more breathing room. And anytime you have this selected, You can also come over to the right where this little toggle of up and down node is and simply drag this up to increase the instances of that shape. And you'll notice that as I drag that up, it's starting to create some interesting sort of patterns here where it's duplicating that and using multiple instances of that shape along the same radius. And you can continue to build off of this. Let's make this a little bit darker here. So with something as this, like this as a start, I could then come back in here and potentially come back to my ellipse tool, create another sort of ellipse here within this space. I'll make this one a little bit darker and center this as well. Bring this in just a little bit here. I'm going to use my shift tool and option to bring that into the center. And I'm going to increase the stroke of my width. So within my properties tab, I can come down here to stroke and increase my point size. And then I can simply hit my duplicate object. Again, using the shift and option key, I could then bring this to the outside if I wanted to and start to play with different variations within this border treatment. So you'll see that I have one version that is fairly simple and another one that is much more complex using that polygon and that radial tool as well as the duplicate shape to house that. And there's endless possibilities about how you could go about this, but this gives you a starting point within the assignment. So the goal would then to go in and create 4 additional borders so that you have 6 in total. What you can do within the space is if you wanted to, I'm going to go ahead and convert the fill of this to black. And I'm going to move this to the back. And the reason I'm going to do that is because you may want to select your object in the center and convert that to white on a black background. And that is totally fine as long as you're using grayscale. Remember that the element should stay the same exact size, but you can play with different values of that element within the space. So hopefully this gives you a starting off point to continue with part 2. So make sure that you have 3 custom patterns in full color and in grayscale for part 1, and 6 border treatments around the same icon or element for part 2. Let me know if you have any questions and don't hesitate to reach out.